Welcome to the Feel Your Best Formula podcast. Are you over 40 and tired of struggling with your weight? Do you feel like you're constantly starting over with your nutrition and fitness? I'm Lil, a certified nutrition coach and former registered nurse, and I too have been there. At the age of 44, I decided I was done with being stuck in the vicious diet cycle. I became a nutrition coach and created the Feel Your Best Formula for women who are ready to do things differently. If you're ready to build a better relationship with food, get your energy back, build muscle, lose fat, and keep it off for good, then you're in the right place. I'm so glad you're here. Now let's build your formula for feeling your best. Hello, welcome to the Feel Your Best Formula podcast. I'm Lil, and today I'm sharing my top meal prep tips in 2024. We have definitely talked about meal prep on here in the past, but today we're going to get real specific and we're going to talk about how you can really simplify things and make meal prep work for you the new way, the modern way. The old-fashioned way to me is the idea of having a fridge full of perfectly prepped containers of food that you cook on Sunday and then you just eat that food all through the week. And honestly, that never worked for me. And I'm continuously working on improving my meal planning, my meal prep. And this is why. Number one, the reason that so many of you are struggling with how you feel about yourself, how you feel about your nutrition and fitness is simply because you're winging it with your nutrition. You're like, oh, I'm eating healthy, but I'm not getting the results I want. And you really can't wing it, especially in the beginning. You've got to have an understanding of what it looks like to eat for the goals that you have. And of course, it would be disordered to forever and ever track your food, weigh your food, measure your food, all of that. I don't want you doing that. I want you to do it for a short amount of time so that you're not winging it, so that you can then be empowered to get to a point where you are eating, I guess we can call it intuitively, but basically where you just know what you need to eat to feel good about yourself. That is the ultimate goal. And I know I talk about meal prep on here, and we've talked about ingredient prep, but I'm going to give you some actual examples and really list out the ways that you can simplify your meal planning and meal prep process. I do have my 15-minute meal planner. I will put a link to that in the comments. And the concept behind my 15-minute meal planner and what I do is I plan an entire week of meals in 15 minutes. And by consistently practicing and trying new things and creating systems, this is how you end up being able to save time, save energy, and maximize your results. And my 15-minute planner is a core piece of my weekly routine. And I feel like some days I do it even faster than 15 minutes, but it's because I have these systems in place that I'm going to share with you today. So I know you might not even be the person that's in charge of your meals. Perhaps it's your partner, but you can always have them listen to this episode or just share the information with them. And before we dive in, I do want to say that meal planning and preparing dinners and feeding my family was incredibly stressful when I was immersed in diet culture and I was constantly trying to lose weight and I was eating in a way that was different than the rest of my family. And I feared certain foods and I feared certain ingredients. And if I did indulge in like just a normal dinner, I would feel guilty and a little bit ashamed because I wasn't following the rules of my diet. And I have to say, moving away from diet culture and instead learning through a macro-based nutrition plan has been like a weight has lifted. I look forward to dinner time. I don't stress about the foods that we're making. And I'll talk about that a little bit more. But if you're in a place right now where you feel like you have to eat separately from your family and what they're eating would be bad for you, I really think this episode might help you see how you could kind of have a win-win situation where you can eat for your goals and you can eat the same or similar things as your family. I also personally feel that sitting down as a family and eating dinner together is really important for families, no matter what your family looks like. It might be you and your child and your dog, or maybe it's you, your spouse, and your 8 children. I don't know what your life looks like, but I know dinner time is a place for conversation and hearing how people's days go. And when you're all eating the same meal, there is a connection that happens. In my view, that is something that is just important to me. Other people might have other opinions, but I don't encourage my clients to eat completely different from their families. I think that overcomplicates things. And if you're all cooking different things, how many like pans and plate, how much stuff are you having to clean every night if you're cooking all these different meals for whatever reason? So if your family eats in a way that is just incredibly unhealthy with very high calorie foods, high fat, lots of sugar and stuff like that, well, then yeah, you probably cannot eat the same way as them. But if they're just eating something like pasta and meatballs, and you're feeling guilty like you can't partake in that because your diet is telling you you need to be gluten-free, then I encourage you to take a look at that, because at the end of the day, life is short. And I'm feeling this very strongly because my oldest son is going off to college in a few months. And every dinner I have with him, I'm thinking to myself, he's not going to be at this table next year. And how sad would it be if I was still in that place where I was more worried about the food I was eating than the people I was spending time with? So if your diet has you separating yourself from your family, I would ask you, what is your feeling about that? And is that something that maybe you want to think about? And is that how you want to live forever? And I understand people have allergies and other issues in their family that do require a separation of certain types of foods. But generally speaking, if you're doing it because you just feel like it's bad to eat the same foods that the rest of your family is eating, or that you're not going to be able to reach your goals, I hope through this episode you'll realize that yes, you can reach your goals. It's just about choices. And honestly, it could make your life so much easier. In particular, I was following a meal plan for a while where I wasn't allowed to eat carbs with dinner. And let me tell you, it can be really hard to throw together a quick meal when you're not allowed to eat carbs. Just last night, we had a busy night. I had to head off to a meeting right after dinner. And I quickly grilled up some teriyaki chicken and put that with some ramen, and I didn't even microwave any broccoli or anything. I just had chicken and ramen. It's all good. The world did not collapse. I did not wake up today 10 pounds heavier. Sometimes that's just what works. And I honestly wasn't feeling that great. I was really craving carbs and needing some protein. I was a little hormonal, and it was just fine. Whereas there definitely was many years in my life where I would have not eaten it, or B, beaten myself up for eating a meal like that. Flexibility is the key to a happy and healthy lifestyle. So if you don't have a lot of flexibility in the way that you're doing things, then you can expect that you're definitely going to have more challenges when it comes to being consistent and ultimately making your habits sustainable. Okay, so let's dive in. These are my top tips why a flexible meal planning system, some meal prep, some ingredient prep. I'm going to share some actual ways of preparing food that I think you'll find really, really helpful. But let's start approaching our nutrition with a really practical mindset. Instead of having lofty goals of every meal being this like perfectly portioned, I mean, you can, if you have the finances, then maybe you're someone that looks at those meal planning services where they show up at your door with perfectly packaged meals, and maybe that's something that works for you. But for me, I prefer to cook, and I don't necessarily want to be deciding on Sunday what my lunch is going to look like on Wednesday. So I don't necessarily plan specific meals. Everything is very flexible, and I'm going to dive into how that works. So, number one, I do just want to review why I follow a macro-based nutrition plan and why that is what I coach my clients with. Number one, a macro-based nutrition plan is very flexible. It focuses on tracking your food so that you can start to understand what is in your food, and then you can start to understand how you feel. For example, number one response I get from my clients after a week or two of tracking is, oh my goodness, I feel so much better now that I can see how much protein I'm eating. Most of my clients come to me eating anywhere from 40 to 80 grams of protein per day, and their goals are usually somewhere between 100 and 150 grams of protein per day when they start eating for their goals. And they just feel so much better. They're not as hungry. They're not looking to snack. They're not obsessing over food anymore. So understanding what you're eating and not just looking at calories. I know calorie counting was really big. I tried it years ago. And if you're only focusing on calorie and not nutrients, you're really missing out on the big picture. And yes, you're going to lose weight if you cut calories, but when you follow a macro plan, and especially if you make sure that you're having adequate protein and you're strength training and you're eating the correct amount of calories, this is a recipe for building muscle mass and losing fat. So it's a win-win. And using macros makes your meal planning and meal prep really easy. So I love the flexibility of macros. And this means you can enjoy all these different foods, and often the foods that you felt guilty or were off limits on previous diets, you learn how to fit them in. I talk about it all the time, but I eat ice cream every night. And on previous diets, I just didn't understand what that looked like because the rule was you cannot have ice cream. And now I know, okay, I have X amount of calories left in the day. I've hit my protein goal. I've hit my fiber goal. We're going to have a little mini ice cream treat. So it really educates you so that you don't have a rigid way of eating and you don't have to restrict foods or food groups to reach the goals that you want. Number three, it's very personalized. It's personalized based on your goals, your activity level, your body composition. It takes into account your age, gender, height, weight, and you use this information to get your best guess at what your ideal macro ratios look like. And traditional diets just hand you a cookie cutter plan, and they don't necessarily take into account your personalized needs. Even better, you can hire a coach to do your macro count, because when I do your macro count, I take in all this different information that you share with me to make sure that we're getting your numbers as correct as we possibly can. Also, macros, long-term sustainability. I said it earlier, the goal is to get you to a place where you're eating intuitively. I don't want to be using my Lose It app for the rest of my life. And I've learned so much from tracking my food. I think that people can think that macros, it's like disordered, and weighing your food is disordered and it's going to create an eating disorder. Let me tell you, every single diet plan I have done, I know at least one person that created disordered habits around it. And that is because it's not just about the tool, it's about the person using it and what's going on in their head and in their life. So you can't say that just because you're measuring your food is going to create disordered eating. And when you work with me, we're not even trying to lose weight at first, most of the time. You're just trying to learn how to nourish your body. And that requires you learning what you're putting into your body. So long-term sustainability, that is the goal. So we can get out of this vicious loop of being all in or all out with dieting, constantly feeling like we need to get back on track and feeling like we're starting over. I was sick of it. I know you're sick of it, but this is a fantastic way to just put the brakes on that way of living. Additionally, with macros, you're looking at your overall health. Again, most diets just want you to cut back on your calories so that you lose weight. Macros shows you how you can eat to improve your overall health, fitness, body recomposition. And you want to have some strength training in there. You want to have some cardiovascular fitness. I'm personally not a fan of nutrition plans that tell you, oh, you don't have to, you don't like to work out? You don't have to work out. That's nonsense. Anyone can work out. Everyone should be strength training. And there are so many benefits from fitness that also are connected to nutrition, in particular, decreasing insulin resistance. So if someone has a high amount of body fat, getting them moving is going to help them avoid being pre-diabetic, and ultimately you can actually improve type 2 diabetes through weight loss. And exercise is how you improve that insulin being taken up by your cells and allowing your body to actually start making use of the glucose that's in your bloodstream. So it's all connected. So I think personally that nutrition plans that are telling you, oh, don't worry, you don't need to work out, they're just trying you to buy their plan, and they're really skipping over some really important pieces of your health and wellness. Everyone should be moving. Everyone should be working out. It's a hill I will die on. I truly believe it. And there's always something you can do. I mean, there's people out there playing all kinds of sports with all types of disabilities, and just getting out there and being active. It's so good for your physical and mental health. Walking is the most underrated activity out there. And if you don't want to start strength training, just start walking. Just start walking, start taking the stairs. Go for a walk after dinner each night and just start moving. And it starts to create the snowball effect where you feel so good that you want to do more of it. So with macros, you can really work on your overall health, and you don't have to kind of segment it into, oh, this is my nutrition and this is my fitness. You're understanding how your nutrition is improving your fitness because it's all connected. All right, so that's why I love macros. Next, let's dive into ingredient prep, because if we're talking about full meal prep, that's again this idea of where you're just like cooking all your meals, plating them, putting them in a container at the beginning of the week, and just every time you want to eat a meal, you just go in and pull out the container, which definitely has its place. It has its benefits, but it's not how I want to live my day-to-day life, and I'm guessing it's probably not what you want to do either. So ingredient prep is where you're actually just prepping different pieces of a meal separately, and then you can build the meal however you like it and have more flexibility. Remember, flexibility is the key to all of this. So eating healthy doesn't have to be eating a perfectly portioned meal every time you sit down to eat. It takes a lot of effort and energy to do that type of meal prep. And most of us don't really have the time to devote, 2-3 hours, however, on a Saturday or Sunday to cook all your meals for the week. And not all of us want to eat a meal on Friday that was prepared on Sunday. And also, it isn't always appealing, maybe if you prep chicken and pasta pesto on Sunday, you're sick of it by Friday. You don't want to eat that anymore. This is why I'm a big fan of ingredient prep. It's so flexible, and this is what I do. It's very simple. You're looking at your meal. You want to have your protein, your carbs, your veggies or fruits, and you want to have some healthy fats. So what I do is I will grill some chicken or steak or cook those in the air fryer, or maybe some chicken sausage or something like that. And then I will make a large batch of rice or roast some potatoes or cook some pasta. And then I will also cook some veggies. And then when it comes time to putting together a meal, you can just make yourself a little plate or bowl with these various ingredients. So, for example, if you have ground beef prepared, you could turn that into taco meat really quickly and make yourself a little taco salad or a big taco salad. Or you could turn it into a little stir fry and add some teriyaki sauce, pair that with the rice and some veggies, and then you have an Asian type bowl. Or you could take that ground beef, you could put some marinara sauce on it and put it on top of the pasta. And all of this is going to take varying, effort, or, it might take you 10 minutes at best to put together a bowl, but you have all these ingredients there where you can really personalize what you feel like having rather than having it decided for you by meal prepping all your food over the weekend. Another tip I have for you is to create a special item grocery list. Now, I use the AnyList app and it has a starred item feature. And what this does is any foods that I know my family enjoys on a regular basis and that I always want to have on hand in my home, no matter what, those go on the starred list. So, for example, looking at it right now, it's things like apples, bananas, bell peppers, lettuce, oranges, potatoes, red onions, sweet potatoes, tomatoes. Then I've got frozen foods, frozen broccoli, frozen edamame, frozen green beans, ice cream cones, lime popsicles. Then for dairy, I've got cheese sticks, cream cheese, eggs, milk, protein yogurt, shredded cheese, sour cream. Then I've got chicken breast, ground beef, ground turkey, Italian sausage, steak, salmon. These are all things that almost every week I buy. And what I do when I'm in that stage of my meal planning is I literally just go to my fridge and my freezer and I see what I have on hand. Do I have ground beef in the freezer? Do I have some chicken breast? And whatever I don't have on hand, I'm clicking off, okay, that's something we need to restock with. So what you're doing here is you're paying attention to what are the foods that my family eats. Now, my kids will not touch quinoa with a 10-foot pole, but I love quinoa. So I have it on my list, but I know that if I'm cooking quinoa, then I'm also going to have to cook maybe regular rice or some egg noodles or something for my kids. But I do want to make sure that I have quinoa in the house. That's also something that I like to do an ingredient prep bowl with, quinoa, some taco meat, some bell peppers and lettuce, because I love the way it tastes. So really figuring out what are the foods that we really go through quickly. Don't put the foods on that list that sit there and you stare at them every time you open your pantry. You don't want to be putting those foods on the list. Those are your special foods that you just buy for one-off recipes. Okay. Another tip is just to keep things super, super simple. And I'm giving you permission to not cook meals that require actual recipes. It's totally okay to serve tuna sandwiches or tacos or hot dogs or just pasta, you know? You shouldn't have to feel like every meal you cook requires you looking at a recipe. I usually take Sundays or one day during the week to do a more in-depth recipe where I actually have to look at the recipe and go, okay, what am I doing here? The rest of the time, I am just taking my chicken, my steak, I'm throwing some seasoning on it. It's often, I love Greek seasoning, the Cavender's Greek seasoning. I use that on a ton of things. We make burgers a lot, make turkey burgers, and I'm just seasoning them with things that I know that we like. I'm not sitting there opening up my phone, looking at a full recipe. I'm just cooking off the top of my brain. I am not doing anything complicated. Anyone can do it. And walking away from this idea that in order to be healthy, you have to be doing these complicated recipes every night. And honestly, most of the meals that I throw together take 20 to 30 minutes max. And it's perfectly healthy and delicious. And I also keep in my freezer, I make sure that I have some frozen Trader Joe's meals. That's what we use often, the Kung Pao chicken or the Mandarin chicken, because those are great when, your original plan goes off track. Or sometimes I'm like, you know what? I kind of just want to give myself a break. It's a bit of a cross between making a meal or grabbing takeout. It's like a happy medium there. And you can just grab the frozen meal, some frozen rice, some frozen broccoli, and then you're creating this really super meal with minimal effort, and it's perfectly healthy. And if you're feeling guilty for doing things like that, then that's where macros can really come in handy, because you can have an understanding of exactly what you're eating. And even things like a frozen pizza and a Caesar salad. There is nothing wrong with throwing a meal like that on the table. If you need some extra protein, you can just have a protein shake with it. So once you learn how to use macros, you understand that all foods fit, and something like just having a tuna sandwich for dinner, when that is going to be quick and easy and perfectly healthy because you're looking at your macros, and you understand it doesn't have to be complicated to be healthy. I think that this is one of the hardest pieces of what diet culture has done to us, because it has made us feel guilty for doing things that are quick and easy, like going to the drive-thru. I was watching a video on YouTube a couple weeks ago, and the guy hosting it talked about how he has rules for his life. And one of his rules is he never eats fast food. And he was out with his group of friends, and they had gone hiking, and it was like in this pretty remote area. In the only restaurant, they were all so hungry, obviously going hiking. And he had eaten all the snacks on the hike because he hadn't anticipated it. And the only place for them to stop and have a meal was McDonald's. And he's sitting there saying, and I just didn't eat. I watched everyone else eat, but I have a life rule that I never eat fast food. And I was sitting there watching the video thinking, that's a really bad life rule. First of all, McDonald's does have salads and wraps and grilled chicken. And if you understood macros, you would know that you can look those things up and you could have eaten. You didn't have to starve yourself and restrict. And in fact, that type of behavior is incredibly disordered. And you also need to understand that you're so hungry because your body just worked really, really hard. So while I think he was saying that to be inspiring, and in his mind, he felt like he's helping people be healthier by telling them it's better not to eat than to eat McDonald's, I'm telling you, I'd rather have you eat McDonald's than starve yourself, because eating the McDonald's is going to be the healthier option and what your body actually needs. There's no awards given at the end of the day for people who want to be snotty about eating fast food. Is it my first choice? No, but If it's my only choice, I'm going to eat it. And every once in a while, can we all agree, McDonald's has really good French fries. Every once in a while, I want some McDonald's. And it might be once or twice a year, but I'm not going to feel guilty about it. So if what you are doing makes you feel like you can't be healthy, this is where macros can really help show you that you can probably include a lot of the things that you're already doing. You just might need to make some shifts or some tweaks. And that's where educating yourself and learning comes into the picture. Okay, let's talk about sheet pan meals because this is a top tip. I think we all know about the slow cooker. We all know about Instant Pots. I love my rice cooker. All of these little mini appliances do the work for you where you can just like set it, walk away, come back, your meal is made. But sheet pan meals, they require a little bit more oversight. You can't just set it and walk away or it's going to burn. But it is such a quick and easy way to get an entire dinner on the table in 20 to 30 minutes. What I do is I grab my parchment paper. I love parchment paper. Like, it's the best. It makes cleanup so easy. I take my largest cookie sheet, I put a layer of parchment paper on the bottom. Then I grab my protein, whether that's chicken or salmon or chicken sausage, and I cut that up all into similar size, bite-sized chunks. And then I put frozen broccoli or zucchini, red pepper, red onion, what have you, like whatever you have that's going to roast up good. And you put it all on the cookie sheet. You're going to want to season your veggies, and you can throw potatoes, sweet potatoes in there. You just want to make sure everything's kind of cut up similar size so it will cook in the same amount of time. And then you're going to spray it with some olive oil. You're going to put it in your preheated oven. Preheat it. I like to do 425. You're going to put it in there. You're going to stir it maybe every 10 minutes. And once the edges are browned and crispy and you can see that everything's cooked through, done. So easy. It is so nice because it gives your meal a really nice flavor because basically you're just roasting everything in the sheet pan. It's really important not to crowd the sheet pan. You want to make sure everything's spread out. You want to make sure you spray, a light layer of oil on it so it doesn't get too greasy. But all the flavors mixed together and it is just so delicious. So you, again, do not have to prep your entire meal ahead of time. You can just throw together this 20 to 30 minute meal on a sheet pan. And if you're not making sheet pan dinners, I highly suggest you start. You could just Google it. There are a bazillion ideas out there. All right. So let's move on and talk about overcoming challenges and staying consistent because that's what we want. We don't want this to be a temporary habit. And I think the biggest challenge we face when it comes to meal prep and meal planning is just getting out of our own way and letting it be simple. As someone who enjoys cooking, I feel like it took me a long time to learn that I should not be planning complicated recipes every night of the week. And I really just needed to be okay with those simple meals like the frozen pizza or the meals from Trader Joe's or just having a sandwich here and there. And of course, leftovers. I do think that being organized overall in your life is going to make meal planning easier for you. So if you are someone who feels like your life is very chaotic and you're trying to work on your meal planning, I would say it would be a huge benefit to you to work on reading a book like Atomic Habits, starting to learn how to plan using Google Calendar, tasks, things like that, and just trying to be more organized in your overall life. Right now, I'm using a system called the PARA method. That's PARA by Tiago Forte. And he has a wonderful book called Building a Second Brain. And it's the organizing system I'm using in my life. And it is life-changing. It's so simple. Anyone can do it. And I highly recommend reading his book, Building a Second Brain. I will put it in the episode details here so you can check it out. But if you're struggling to be organized, you're going to struggle to meal plan because it's just part of being organized. So keep it as simple as possible for yourself. Meet yourself where you're at. Don't overwhelm yourself because that's going to be a recipe for throwing in the towel. I know it can be really hard to stay consistent. And this is where there's a James Clear quote. He's the guy who wrote Atomic Habits, where he says, you want to create habits that work on your worst days. You don't want to create these lofty habits that only work when life is great. You want to create habits that you can stick to even when life is hard. And being honest with yourself about how much effort and energy and time you really have available to you in the evenings, and being honest about that is going to help you be more effective in recognizing like, okay, I really just need a quick slow cooker meal, or I can do a sheet pan meal this night. And maybe even you want to get a meal delivery service if that is something that's available to you. I don't know what your situation is, but being open-minded to try new things and do things differently. Because if you want consistency, you've got to figure out what actually works for the life that you live. You can't create habits for an alternate reality that you are currently not living in. Okay, so that's my top tips for meal planning and prepping in 2024. So number one, I really do recommend, if you've been listening to my podcast, go and do my macro calculator and just get an idea of what your macros might look like. And then let's think about some ingredient prep. What are some things that you could do that you could prep and easily throw together a really quick meal for yourself? Create that special, frequently used items grocery list where you are just getting real in tune with, these are the foods that my family loves, so let's make sure that I always have them on hand. Keep things super simple by being okay with things like sandwiches for dinner here and there, or hot dogs and beans. It doesn't always have to be complicated. And if you haven't tried sheet pan meals, I highly recommend adding those into your rotation. Okay, that is my best tips for meal planning and meal prep in 2024. I hope that you found it helpful, and you can always reach out to me via email. I answer all of my emails personally, and I've got my 15-minute meal planner link in the comments if that's something that you want to check out. And I will see you here back next Monday with a brand new episode. Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode of the Feel Your Best Formula podcast. If you haven't already, make sure to check the episode details for my new listener starter guide, and any additional resources mentioned in the episode can also be found in the show notes on my website. You can always find me on Instagram at Macros with Lil, and for more healthy lifestyle tips, recipes, and information on my one-to-one and group coaching services, make sure to check out my website. All the links can be found below. If you know someone else who is ready to start building their formula for feeling their best, please share the love and send them a link to the podcast. I hope you found today's episode helpful, and I'll see you back here next week for a brand new one.